Okay, now I've told you how to study for Section B. I've told you how to do the mundane, boring, I know, and the intelligent, much more enjoyable. Now let's go through the breakdown on the paper of Section B. So as I said, you've already done Section A, maximum 1 hour there, and now you're going to go into Section B. I don't want you to read the paper either at this stage. I actually want everybody to do question 6, the very first question. I think you should do that question because I don't feel like I'm doing a question at all. Because we've done our summaries, haven't we? We've done our definitions and all our formulae. And that's what this part is basically about. It's a mixture of the entire course. You've got to do any 8 out of 12. So what I say is when you finish Section A, open up a double page where you're doing your exam paper and write down Part A, skip a couple of lines, write down Part B, skip a few lines, Part C, skip a few lines, Part D, and go all the way down to the last part, which I think is L. So write down all 12 parts and then just have a quick look at it. Here's an example of that question from 2024. So it says, answer any 8 of the following parts, A, B, C, and so on. So you write down your parts from A to L, and then you look at anything that you think is very, very easy. I can see conduction and convection, Part D, our methods of heat transfer, distinguish between both of them. So they're the sort of things that I can do very, very, very quickly. So fill in as many as you can. And then move on. And then every time you finish a question, what I would do is I would go back and fill in another couple of parts, because as you go through the paper, your memory is jogged. So you start remembering other things and then you go back and fill it in again. So you don't even feel like you're doing a question. I'm not even going to put a time on that. You just keep on doing it throughout the exam for the next 2 hours. It's a good question to do. They're easy. A lot of the information is in your table book with the formulae. And the problems are very, very simple. We're talking about 7 marks per each part. 8 by 7 is 56 marks altogether. Do as many as you can. Do all 12. You can get 4 totally wrong, and you can still get 100% on your paper. So definitely, I'll put a star beside that. I definitely want everybody to do question number 6. Now let's move on to the next part of the paper. Now I would start reading the rest of the paper to see what questions I'd want to do. I mean, some of the questions you want to do will jump out at you. You'll say, oh, there's a nice question on light, and I know that really well. So you'll pick out your favorites very, very quickly. Question 7 is always on mechanics, and it can be quite a difficult question. You can be talking about satellites and GPS and all of that kind of stuff. So unless you love your mathematics, maybe you do applied maths, and certain students will go towards that. But other students will say, no, I'm not going to touch it. Does that mean I'm leaving out mechanics? No. You'll still do your mechanics experiments. You'll still learn your mechanics definition, so you can do question number 6. And you'll still do some basic mechanics, because basic mechanics like kinetic energy will always appear around the paper. But that really hard stuff involving satellites, it's usually the last 3 lessons of my videos, gravitational circular motion, simple harmonic motion. You could decide to leave it out. Question 8, 9, 10. Well, they are going to be tough questions, probably tough questions, but it might be something that you like. I'm not saying that these are exact. Mechanics is probably exact. Mechanics is definitely going to be question 7. But these, that could be light and sound. That might be a bit of electricity, might be heat. I don't know. It'll be jumbled around the place. These aren't set in stone. It's just a general idea. These 4 questions here can be some of the toughest questions on the paper. They're long questions. They might contain a problem that requires some serious calculation. But again, you will look at them and say, oh, I love diffractions, I'm going to do that question. So have a look at them and make a decision. Question 11 is modern physics. I'm not saying it's going to be question 11. It might be question 10. It might be somewhere else. This is just a general idea of what the paper might look like. It's not set in stone. But modern physics is usually going to be something on lesson 1 in our modern physics is about the electron, photoelectric emission, and lessons 4, 5, 6 are about the nucleus. It's usually about one or the other. I always tell my students to do modern physics because my modern physics notes, they also contain the option. So I think there's a fantastic return from doing the modern physics section. You'll notice, by the way, it's not as long as the other sections. It's probably only half as long as electricity, half as long as light and sound, half as long as mechanics. But there's a great return on it because it's modern and they want your paper to be modern. So I would say I would like my students to do question 11 and question 12. Question 11 is either on the electron or the nucleus. Question 12 is the option question. That's also included in my modern physics notes. Part A is particle physics. Part B is applied electricity. I think 95% of the country now do particle physics, all about the quarks and the muons and so on. You do one or the other. It's A or B. They're both 56 mark questions. Usually, sometimes they go into a half question, sometimes they go into the STS question, but that's usually where it is. I would do those 2 questions there. So you know you've got to do 5 questions out of 8 altogether. Sorry, out of 9. 5 out of 9. So modern physics will give you 2 full questions there and maybe a half a question somewhere else. You can actually get 50% of your marks by doing modern physics for a section that's quite short to the other big sections. So I always advise my students, do your modern physics. It's full of intelligent stuff as well. It's full of calculations. Question 13 can be a nice question to do. It's an STS question, a real-life physics question. But it can be on any part of the course. So obviously, if it's not a part of the course that you've specialized in, you'll probably decide to leave it out. But they give you a nice paragraph. And often, one of the answers or 2 of the answers is actually inside the paragraph. And then they might give you 8 parts. Sometimes they merge some of the parts together. So you do your 8, you do all 8 parts. It's 8 by 7, which is 56 marks again. Let's have a look at an example from, I'm looking at Leaving Cert paper 2024. So let's have a look at an example of that. So where's my STS question? Let me scroll down towards the end of the paper. So question 13, it says read the following passage. So you read the paragraph and you should read the paragraph very, very carefully because there's going to be some hints in there as to what some of the answers will be. And then you have a number of parts down here, parts 1 to 4. So they're usually 7 marks, but sometimes they merge 2 parts together to give you a 14-mark question. But it's a really nice question if it's a part of the course that you've studied. So I would recommend that question. Of course, if you haven't done it, you can't do it. If you haven't done that part of the course, you can't do it. But I would recommend it if it is a part of the course that you have specialized in. And then we're on to question 14. Really popular question. Again, I'm going to put a star beside it. Most of the country do this question because it's made up of 4 parts and you've got to do any 2 out of 4 parts. Each part is 28 marks. 2 by 28 is 56 altogether. The nice thing about these questions is they're half questions and therefore they can't ask you a really complicated calculation. They can ask you a really complicated calculation in here, these full questions, but not there. So they're popular questions. Part A is usually on mechanics. And part C or D is usually on modern physics. So there's the other half question that I was talking about. That's why I'm telling my students, go and do the modern physics, because you might get 2.5 questions out of 5 for section B, half of the paper on modern physics. Popular question, nice question to do. What about my timing? We're talking about 20 minutes per question, maybe 25. If it's a tough question, you can extend to 25 minutes per question, but it's around that 20 to 25 minutes should leave you enough time to finish the paper, and then review it.